I don't care if it's education or entertainment. I'ma do my thing. So, in our attempt to actually understand what in the world is going on with the world, we're going to take a closer look at some of the moves that have been made here in our own country while the world has been upside down with this pandemic. How are we going to do that? Let's take a look at the laws by learning how to look at a bill. Join me. We're on a journey. So, bills passed during 2020. Wow, this gives us an extensive list. 7 more rows. Yeesh. Okay. HR 6666. Let's type that in. Let's see what happens. All right, this pops up. Okay, this is congress.gov. That sounds very official to me, and there's a lot of stuff on this page. But I've got the title here, HR 6666. And then there's the short name, Trace, the Trace Act. All right, so what does all this mean? 116th Congress. For those of you who don't know, the 116th Congress indicates a term where Senate meets to have legislative meetings. This is where the laws are voted on, introduced, and basically made. Well, not made, but passed. The person who introduced it is Bobby L. Rush, Representative Bobby L. Rush. He introduced it May 1st, 2020. And the House of Energy and Commerce is whom he's looking to get the authorization from for the bill to be passed. All right, the latest action on the bill was that it was referred to the House committee. Just basically introduced and pointed out to the committee. Here's a little tracker where we can see where it becomes a law. It has not become a law yet, all right? But this is the journey it will take to become a law. This is what's on its way. Okay, HR 666, yep. Here is your little table of contents. I like to click on this one to see just, the reason I like to click on the titles part is because you can recognize it by HR 6666, but some people may call it the Trace Act, right? So you want to come here and see all the names that it's called. Let's go back. Where were we? Actions we spoke about. The co-sponsors is also interesting. It lists how many people are in support of this, all right? Co-sponsors. And these are all the representatives. These are people who have been voted into their positions by the people in, their constituents, as we call it, the voters, right? This is why your local voting matters the most, because these are the people who will go out and literally represent you, okay? All right, so these are the co-sponsors. We know the committee is the House Energy and Commerce, okay? Where were we? So the summary of it is simple. This gives you the simple summary if you're in a rush. And this basically tells you what the Trace Act is. Okay? Now, I'm not in a rush, and I don't think you are either. So let's take a look at the full text. Okay? We see all the stuff we already know. Second session of the 116th Congress. Mind you, that is a 2-year period. All right, HR 6666. So it gives you the letter of the law here. All right, my highlighting is terrible. This is the language of the law, and here again are the co-sponsors. All right. Here's the letter of the law once more. Okay. Now, the short title, which I referred to before, is right here. And this is where we keep seeing the Trace Act, so that if you hear it in the news, it's the Trace Act. The news can say it's reporting effectively and accurately because it's referring to the name that it's referred to within its own bill. That's the first section. The second section discusses testing and contract tracing. Contract tracing is another term that's hot in the media right now. contract tracing using mobile health units. So now here, as I teach my students, whenever we have sections like these and you see an indentation, notice section starts here, but there's an indentation. That is a direct indicator that this is more detail about the header. All right. So if this is our header and there's indentation afterwards to start, then, this detail, all that follows is detail for that section. Okay. So section 2 is all about explaining this bill. All right. So in general, tells you what this bill is about in general. And then, indentation. So these are details about the in general. They'll be using mobile health units, which drives me nuts. People are going to drive around and administer tests and vaccines and stuff in their private companies. I'm not feeling it. Excuse me, I digress. As necessary, testing individuals and providing individuals with services. This is what they'll do, okay? At their residences. That's interesting. They will come to your home. Now, that's letter A, and then we indented, but now we're back to letter B, which means we're still discussing this section here because all of this falls under there. However, we are no longer talking about it in general. We are now talking specifically about permissible uses of funds. All right. So it tells you this is what a grant recipient will be able to receive, or how the grant recipient should use the funds that he or she receives or the group receives. So now, to hire, train, compensate, and pay the expenses of individuals. Okay, so you can use this money to pay your employees. To purchase personal protective equipment and other supplies. Protective equipment. That's a little too general. All of this is other supply. That's really general. I hope they go into detail. No, there's no indentation. So the bill just leaves it at that, like personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment could be anywhere from masks to doctor's jackets to scrubs to a firearm. Now, people are going to say I'm being ridiculous, but a firearm is personal protective equipment. So if they wanted to hire security or they wanted to hire like muscle to help do their jobs, they technically could under this bill. And that is not me speculating or misinterpreting. This bill is open enough for that to be true. This is where people need to understand how language works. Protective equipment. If I look up protective equipment and I type in the word gun and a gun is protective equipment, then that means that applies here. If it's a knife, pepper spray, this is all protective equipment. So they could hire their own personal police to walk with them if they should choose to. All right, I digress again. So that's B under that section. So now we see all of this section. All of this stuff here is under this section. We have in general, permissible uses of funds, priority. Priority meaning who will get the money. All right, applicants proposing to conduct activities funded under this section in hot spots and medically underserved communities. Now, again, the terminology, medically underserved communities. All right. Now, here's something I want to show you. As we come down, we have C, we have D, we have E. We're going to skip to F. Why? Because F is where we find our definitions. This is where we find our definitions. So if I wanted to find something like the term medically underserved community, I would simply go here and find that it would give me a link. And then this link would bring me to a place where I would find the definition of underserved. Now, some of you are like, where in the world are we supposed to find the true definition? Control F, people. Underserved, what was it? Communities? Oh, there it is down at the bottom. All right. And then it defines the term for you. So now, what did I just do? Let's come out of here. I simply typed Control F and I looked for the words we were looking for. Underserved community. Because I may not want to read through this entire document right now. Maybe some other time. All right. So that's how I would find that. Again, I would love to dive into this with you, but we're just looking at the bill, how to read the bill. Okay, so back at the bill, the other sections, so that was who gets priority and Very interesting who gets priority. It's basically people in urban areas and people in areas that don't have very much money or representation in the government. All right. Then there's distribution. How Wow. In selecting grant recipients, that means the people getting this money to do this job of tracing, the secretary shall ensure that the grants are distributed across urban and rural areas. So now they're doing us a favor by bringing it to urban and rural areas because this is where people can't help themselves. So they're going to send mobile units in to make sure in these urban and rural areas that people get tested and they get tracked and traced and vaccinations. I don't know if this is by force or by compliance. It does not specify. All right. So there's distribution, federal privacy requirements. This basically means what laws they have to adhere to and what laws they must not break. And the definitions section is the key. And then there's the authorization of appropriations. That means how much will be off. What? Holy moly. Donut shop. That's a lot of money. Such sums as may be necessary for each of fiscal year 2021 and any subsequent. Wow. 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 That's a big budget for such. Well, that was HR 6666, How to Read a Bill with Raysor. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm thoroughly saddened.